I start today's video, please sure to stick around to the end of the video because I'm going to be announcing one of the winners of the pre-order giveaway, so be sure to stick around. And now, let's get into the topic of today's video. As you saw by the title, I'm going to be talking about the deleted stories of Awaited Soul. Now, there are 6 stories in the collection: To Be Human, Before, After, and Forever, The Book Club, Children of Shadows, The House on Windy Drive, and Awaited Soul, but there are actually 3 other stories that didn't make the cut, so I want to talk about those today. Now, just because these stories didn't make it into this collection doesn't mean they won't be in the collection in the future, so definitely if you're excited about these stories, don't be sad. They might come out in the future, but they're not coming out with Awaited Soul. The first story is a story called Coco. Before I start about Coco, I need to do a little bit of background explanation. So there used to be a coffee shop nearby that was called Coco. And this is a true story, by the way. This isn't like the story. This is true in my area. There used to be an ice cream shop. And in the ice cream shop, it was all themed to monkeys. And they had this monkey statue holding like a platter. And I'm sorry, it was terrifying, okay? It was so creepy, it was so weird. We would sit down and like look at it sideways because it was so weird. And my mom said, you know, Julia, you should write a story about that creepy monkey statue. So for NaNoWriMo 2 years ago, I actually wrote a collection of short stories for that NaNoWriMo. None of them made it into the collection. Yeah, no, none of them made it into the collection actually because they just didn't fit the style of Awaited Soul, but it was fun to write, and Coco almost made it in, but it was very creepy, it was very cool to write. My main problem, the reason it didn't fit into the collection was it was missing like a driving force. It had lots of horror, it had lots of gore, but the story itself was just kind of weak, and I was able to come up with a backstory, but it just needed more fleshing out and more explanation. So I didn't want to put, the theme of all 3 of these is I didn't want to put something in the collection that felt incomplete to me, and it wasn't one of those things that I could just fix with editing. It needed like a real story overhaul, so that's why I didn't make it into the collection. The second story I want to talk about is called Seared. Now, Seared is actually a play on words, as in like S-E-E-R-E-D, as in like seared by flames, and then S-E-A-R, which is the type of seer where you can like see into the future and that sort of like prophecies and things like that. And the reason I called it Seared is because the story is about this boy whose grandmother has a stroke. And after the stroke, she starts talking about weird things. And at first he thinks that it's just part of some of the side effects, which is quite common in stroke patients. They'll commonly babble or talk about things afterwards, and it's what happens sometimes. But he begins to realize that what she's talking about may not just be random words, that she is actually predicting a prophecy, and the prophecy keeps having to do with flames and fire and smoke, and slowly but surely he starts to put the pieces together about the little things that she's talking about randomly, and eventually he figures out what's going to happen. Whether it's too late or not, you will have to find out. Now, this was written in terms of journal entry, so it's sort of him keeping track of what was going on, which made it really fun to write, very engaging. I love writing journal entries. I just think it's a very easy way to kind of get into the character's mind and like directly have the reader think what they're thinking. But I will say overall, it was just kind of, I don't know, it just, again, it didn't feel quite right. And even when my parents read it, like they said it was good, but it was just, it didn't have the spunk that I wanted it to. The concept overall was good, and it's a solid concept. I'm gonna continue working on it, but it didn't fit. It didn't work with what I wanted it to do. So that was Seared. Last but not least is something called the Marigold Graveyard. So the Marigold Graveyard I actually wrote for a competition a little while ago. It was like, I think it was 800 words was the cutoff point for the competition. And basically they gave you 3 things that you had to incorporate in your story. So if I remember correctly, the things I had to incorporate were fantasy, children's story, and garden. So because of all these three, I came up with this concept of these two brothers that are arguing. One of them loves to garden, and the other brother decides to stomp and destroy his garden because he gets mad at him one day. And when this happens, the boy cries, and as he's crying, this little mythical creature starts approaching him in the garden. And what happens next is part of the story, but it's basically about what happens because his brother destroyed his garden, and that's why it's called the Marigold Graveyard. But it is actually, honestly, this was one of the coolest stories I wrote. The reason I didn't include it in the collection was it felt too fantastical. I really liked it, and it's not super long, but it has a really nice punch to the end of it. And I would have included it in the collection, except like I said, all of A Weighted Soul stories, the reason that they're scary is because they're grounded in truth and they're grounded in reality. And just throwing a story in there with a mythical creature that could technically be qualified as fantasy, it didn't feel right to me. So we're holding on to that story, and we will see it in another collection. So those are the three stories that didn't make it into A Weighted Soul. I hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit about them, and perhaps you will see them in the future. As for the winner of today's pre-order giveaway, I'm gonna do a drum roll, and the winner is this person. Congratulations, you have won an Amazon gift card. I hope you enjoy A Weighted Soul, and definitely buy some more books with that Amazon gift card, or whatever you'd like. It's up to you. Thank you for stopping by. Bye!